The Trump budget's impact on Ohio, and could a hillbilly run for U.S. Senate? Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Jim Siegel, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Terry Casey, Republican strategist. And Sandy Tice, director of Progress Ohio. President Trump's proposed federal budget is drawing fierce opposition from Ohio Democrats and basically shrugs of indifference from most Ohio Republicans. The budget increases funding for the military, infrastructure, and border security, but it cuts spending for Medicaid, food stamps, and other social programs. The White House says it is targeting assistance to the truly needy.
We are not kicking anybody off of any program who really needs it. We have plenty of money in this country to take care of the people who need help. Okay? And we will do that. We don't have enough money to take care of everybody who doesn't need help.
This is a budget that is immoral and that will cause an enormous amount of pain for the most vulnerable people in our nation. This is a budget that will be rejected by the American people and must not see the light of day here in Congress.
Jim Siegel, of course, Ohio expanded Medicaid that faces cuts in the Trump budget. What else might Ohio feel from this budget?
Well, this is kind of across the board, like you mentioned. I mean, poverty programs are set to lose $272 billion in this budget, and that's going to have a big effect on Ohio in a number of ways. Medicaid, $610 billion, and that could even grow if you also account what was passed in the Republican Health Care Act. That alone was expected to cause up to a million Ohioans to lose insurance. I mean, that estimate comes from Sherrod Brown's office. May be high, but let's just say it's high by 20%. Now you're still talking about 800,000 Ohioans, including a number on Medicaid expansion. And so, yeah, it's going to have a wide-ranging impact. I would like to see the line that the Trump administration is drawing between who currently is getting services, who doesn't really need help, versus who does, because that would be a kind of a fun debate to have.
And with all due respect, just like with the last six budgets President Obama submitted, they were kind of dead on arrival. This one's somewhat dead on arrival because the Constitution's pretty clear. Congress gets to decide the budget. So presidents can propose, but it's going to be Congress that decides.
But if the floor is at a certain point, isn't that give Congress, especially a Republican Congress, to not add as much back as they would have if they had started at a different point?
Well, one way or the other, America's kind of got to get some restoration of fiscal sanity, because we're at about 20 trillion in the deficit, and it's going up at about 10 trillion. It's nearly doubled in the last 8 or 9 years. So some fiscal sanity's got to get returned, but how do you do it's the challenge.
That is what they're saying, Sandy, is that we can't continue on this road with entitlements. There has to be some reform. So how do you reform without pain?
I like the way they talk about entitlements, like Social Security is an entitlement. We paid into that. Tax cuts for rich people are not entitlements, and that is a huge cost in this budget, but those people think they're entitled. Every major campaign promise that Trump made is broken in this budget. Mexico's not paying for the wall. We are. He said he wouldn't cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He wants to cut them. And he said he was going to help people who need help, and he's not helping them.
But would you agree that Medicaid needs some reform? Medicare needs some reform.
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to do it more strategically, and what they want to do in the Affordable Health Care Act replacement is to cut Medicaid to the point where it would devastate the medical economy in Ohio. If we have more good-paying health care jobs, we have fewer people who need public assistance.
And the other part of the problem is, as a baby boomer, what we paid into Social Security is not enough to pay for how long we're going to live and all the benefits that have been promised.
You know, it would be difficult to overstate how important Medicaid is to Ohio. It pays for one in 2 births in Ohio. Aside from the 715,000 people that came on through expansion, there's another 3 million who are disabled, low income. It pays for almost all of the nursing home care in Ohio. So I agree with Jim. Just on that little piece of the pie, it could have some really devastating impacts on Ohio.
The cuts have gotten a lot of attention, but there are some positive things possibly in this budget that could help Ohio, Laura. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base would certainly stand to benefit from
Right, and
military spending.
Sure, the president's proposed a pretty substantial jump in defense spending, and a place like Wright-Patterson, which has 27,000 jobs, it's the largest single-site employer in the state. It could benefit pretty significantly from that.
Infrastructure spending, Sandy, it's going to help working guys and women in Ohio?
It depends on how they structure it, but it could help. We have a lot of jobs in the skilled trades we have a lot of people in the skilled trades who need jobs, and it could help them.
What are the chances that 80% of this, 20% of this becomes a reality? Is Congress just going to just ignore it and just do their own thing?
Well, they're going to ignore it. They're going to pick up some parts of it. And one thing we've missed is interest rates have slowly started to go up. That makes a big impact on the budget, because when you got to pay interest on $20 trillion in debt, that adds up more and more. So we're still going to have deficit spending. The question is, how much do we trim and slow it down?
I would not be surprised to see at least some of the basic framework stay in terms of military spending going up, other programs maybe not going up as much as we've seen in the past, but I don't think you're going to get anything close to what President Trump has proposed. I mean, both of Ohio's senators have already pretty much said this thing is not going to fly. I think John McCain took him about 4 seconds to say, call it dead on arrival. So, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the concepts stick in some form.
Tax cuts are always popular, so you'll see probably the tax cuts stay in there.
Well, some of the tax cuts can more pay for themselves. Some of them can't. So I think the easier ones, like repatriating the roughly $2 trillion that corporations like Apple have parked overseas, getting some of that back, that's more likely to pass.
This whole pay for themselves idea that you cut taxes and it spurs the economy so much. Based on the Trump budget, he's predicting like a 3% economic growth every year for X number of years. And economists are, I was reading an economist who ran like 10 million simulations and said the chances of that actually hitting that number year after year after year is only 4%.
Right. Yeah, they're saying that's wildly overstating the actual growth that's likely to come.
All right. There was a little campaign news this week as we prepare for 2018. First in the race for U.S. Senate, the only Republican in the race, Josh Mandel, picked up the endorsement this week of the Republican with whom he would serve.
Today I'm encouraging all Republicans to unify behind Josh so we can work together to get this economy moving again, to fight for more jobs, higher wages, and to restore America's leadership role in the world.
You know, usually this is no big deal, but because Mandel is such a polarizing figure, there is speculation as to why Portman would endorse him now. Then came word from BuzzFeed that some Republicans are recruiting a primary opponent for Mandel. Henry Gomez of BuzzFeed reports they are eyeing hillbilly elegy author and new Columbus resident J.D. Vance. Terry, first to Rob Portman's endorsement of Mandel. We're about a year away from the primary, 18 months from the election. Why would he so publicly endorse him now?
Well, part of it looks on the surface like Pat Tiberi is not going to run there. A couple other people have mentioned. So I think it's partly trying to unify, save the cost and the battle of a primary. Now, the J.D. Vance thing, I checked some pretty good sources. There are some contributors that would like somebody other than Josh, but on the other hand, J.D. Vance, who's got his wife, I think, is about a month away from giving birth to their first child. She's got a new job this fall as law clerk to the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm not sure it's going to work in his schedule, plus he just sold the movie rights and Ron Howard's going to direct and produce it. So something could happen. There's some people not happy with Josh Mandel, but having Portman's backing is better than the opposite.
So this is just a trial balloon to see if it creates some buzz. I mean,
What's funny is there was talk about not only Pat Tiberi running, John Husted running, John Kasich running, and now J.D. Vance. What this tells me is there were a lot of Republicans who are very unhappy with Josh Mandel. He was the pants on fire king. He told the most lies, according to PolitiFact, in the last race. That's quite a crown to be wearing, and I see why the Republicans want something else.
I'll mark you down as undecided.
well, you know, when I always look at when a field is thin or strong, it comes down to the strength of the incumbent. And could it be that just Republicans look at Sherrod Brown and they say it's going to be a midterm election, Republicans who are in power never do well, Laura, in a midterm, that Sherrod Brown is going to be tough to beat?
Well, you know, they threw a lot of money at him last time around when it was the first match of Josh Mandel against Sherrod Brown, and and a lot of third-party dark money came in. It was I can't even remember the number. It was eye-popping though, and Sherrod Brown managed to pull off a win. So maybe they're thinking that Josh isn't the right guy to challenge him. They need somebody different, or it could be because he's polarizing. It might be a combination of the two.
J.D. Vance is an intriguing, I mean, he's got a lot of attention. I think we all know who he is. And I think, you know, the political watchers and maybe even more educated folks have read his book, at least know who he is. But does he have enough strong name recognition to run a statewide campaign here in Ohio?
I don't know it to start, but
Yeah.
I think he could build it. And I think he is an interesting kind of outside the political box type of candidate. You know, he's written what is becoming a very popular book. You know, it's going to be made into a movie. He's got some perspectives on things that maybe you don't often hear about when you're talking to your typical Republican candidates, and frankly, even some Democrats as well. So he would be an interesting choice. Sherrod Brown would be tough to beat. I find this. And maybe Terry can weigh in more on this, but this seems to me to be a lot of dynamic of Kasich versus Trump dynamic going on right here. Your Kasich wing of the Republican Party would like to see someone other than Josh Mandel, who's trying very hard to mirror Donald Trump, run for this seat. And I'm wondering how much that is at play behind the scenes.
You're saying there might be politics in politics?
Shocking.
Is there a chance that Josh Mandel could, because he's aligning himself so closely with Trump, and if Trump is very unpopular in 2018, he could hurt the rest of the Republican ticket, governor, other statewide offices?
Well, if Trump's hurting the ticket, then he's going to hurt the ticket, whether it's Josh or whether it's J.D. Vance. So, you can overthink these things a little bit, but it's a long ways to go, and I'm just surprised now that Portman came out and did the backing, because that's a plus for him.
Yeah. One thing I'd remember too is there are still 4 Republicans running for governor, and only one's going to win the nomination. There's still time for that to shake out into other races too.
All right. Every candidate for office in Ohio has a plan to fight the state's terrible opioid epidemic. But Democrat for Governor Nan Whaley takes a different tactic. She is going after the pharmaceutical industry, who critics charge prescribed too many painkillers.
I believe if you make a mess, you ought to clean it up. Well, the drug companies made this mess, and it's time they stopped passing the buck to Ohio's taxpayers and started paying to clean it up. On my watch, if the drug companies want to keep doing business in Ohio, they need to pay for the police and first responders, the detox facilities, and recovery services that threaten to bankrupt our cities and towns.
Sandy Tice, when you see the fight against this opioid epidemic and you see what the politicians say, you never hear them say the drug companies are responsible. She does. Is that a wise move?
I think they are partly responsible, and I think it's welcome anytime somebody's willing to take on the big pharmaceutical industry. But when people ask her how she was going to make this happen and how you would decide which of the addicts got addicted because of the pharmaceutical industry and which because they got heroin on the street, she doesn't have an answer for that. It's kind of like Trump saying that Mexico was going to build the wall. We need more information.
I'm going to give her a prize for grandstanding, and there might be a reason, because if you're mayor of Dayton with a higher murder rate than Chicago and many times higher than New York or LA, I'd want to change the subject too. So I think if she's the candidate, in fact, there's some Republicans hoping she is, between their failing schools, the murder rate, the crime in Dayton, I don't think Ohioans want her to do for Ohio what she's done for Dayton.
You know, going after the drug companies is not necessarily a new idea. She is the first one to say it out loud. But there have been other states where the attorneys general have sued large drug makers, saying that they overmarketed opiates and described them as less addictive than they actually were. You know, everybody agrees that the addiction crisis started with overprescribing, you know, years ago, and that as they clamped down on pill mills and you know, handing out prescriptions for opiates like candy, that shut down that supply, and a lot of people moved over to heroin and fentanyl. And you see that in the numbers that the Department of Health have. There were 3,000 accidental overdose deaths last year, or in 2015, and you know, the rise in the illicit drugs, the non-prescription drugs, is really pretty remarkable.
If I recall, Cardinal Health was involved in a settlement with West Virginia, and they had over their problem there.
Right, and that's kind of the other. you know, the pharmaceutical companies are just one layer of this issue. The drug distributors, Cardinal Health and others. I mean, Cardinal Health was pumping pumping hundreds of millions of pills into rural West Virginia counties. But then there's also the doctors and the pharmacies that are distributing these drugs, and then there's the personal responsibility of those who are taking them and getting addicted. So, I understand why you would want to come out and do this for political purposes. However, it seems to me to be a much more complex issue than just pointing the finger at one layer of this. When I think there's blame to go around.
Yeah, it's similar to the tobacco settlements, and you could target Medicaid, Medicare spending on tobacco-related diseases. Sandy, is she just trying to? I mean, none of the candidates have really made a mark yet. It's still very early, but this, puts her on some people's radar. And
I think it was a well-done video. It's a good issue that's timely. But like Jim said, there are a lot of layers to this. I remember several years ago, the state, I was still a reporter, so it was more than 10, they issued a study that they showed a large number of people getting multiple opioid prescriptions from 10 different doctors, 15 different pharmacists. And I was stunned by the large number of people who were doing that and getting away with it.
And I do think that the prescription reporting drug database that Ohio put in place 8 years ago or so, the ORS program, has really cut down on that doctor shopping.
All right. Let's get to our next topic. Speaking of prescription drugs, Ohio voters this fall will decide a measure that supporters say will lower drug prices. It's called the Ohio Drug Price Relief Act. It would force the state to spend no more than the lowest prices paid by Medicaid or the VA. Drug companies and most of the medical establishment opposes it, and they fired the first shot in what will likely be a barrage of TV ads.
Over the next few months, you're going to hear a lot about the November ballot issue on prescription drugs.
A California healthcare CEO is promising to reduce our prescription drug costs.
It sounds too good to be true, because it is.
It's being opposed by Ohio nurses, pharmacists, and doctors because we believe it could increase drug costs for millions of Ohioans.
Respected veterans organizations across Ohio are against it.
Get the facts. This ballot issue is a prescription for disaster.
That'll be the first of many ads I anticipate, Laura. But where is this coming from? We all complain about high drug prices. Why is Ohio being targeted for this big effort?
Well, it's interesting. It mirrors an effort that was put on the ballot in California, Proposition 61. It went down pretty hard. I think 60% voted against it. And there was an incredible amount of money spent on it. I think the pharmaceutical companies were the main backers of it, and they put $111 million or so into the race. And the other side, which is backed by this healthcare HIV or AIDS funding, healthcare. It's some nonprofit. Is the one that kind of launched it in California, and they're going to see if they can, win in Ohio. The idea is to, like you said, pay no more than what the VA pays, and the VA gets like maybe a 20 to 25% discount on drugs. But pharma is coming out strong against it. That's the pharmaceutical industry, and they paid for a study from 2 former Medicaid directors who said it's unworkable. It could drive costs up instead of down, and they're ringing the alarm bells.
And part of the veterans group, the reason they're concerned is they're afraid that if it's based on veterans pricing, then the pricing will go up to veterans in order to compensate for what they won't make on other customers. So I think what's interesting in this commercial is they're trying to rely on the credibility of doctors and nurses and other people. They obviously don't have the CEOs of the drug companies out doing the commercials.
But when you see that the medical associations, Sandy, and drug companies and nurses association, all folks involved in the medical industrial complex are against it, I suspect that someone has some money to lose, and is that why they oppose it?
These people approach Progress Ohio about doing their press.
This is the supporters of the Drug Relief Act.
Yes,
okay.
And we looked at it. We have some experts on our board in the healthcare field. We looked at it really hard, and we had a lot of questions that we didn't think they could answer. One was, if you are a public sector union and you negotiate as part of your contract lower drug prices, how does that interact with this? They couldn't answer our questions. It's a great issue. I'm glad people are talking about it. Maybe it will help inform a better debate and we can do something reasonable.
Jim, this was one of the arguments for a single-payer healthcare system, or at least a public option, was that if you had large negotiating power, you could lower the prices. If you had caps, you could lower the prices on these things. And this wouldn't do it. according to opponents.
I don't know. I don't know if this could do it or not. That's the kind of I'm waiting to hear more, as Sandy just said, more details from the groups pushing this. I really do want to hear answers to some of these concerns that are being raised by some pretty prominent people, in associations in the state. That's quite a list of folks that was just lined up on that ad saying that they oppose this. That is going to be hard to overcome unless you start coming up with some reasonable explanations for why they're wrong.
This could impact, roughly 4 million Ohioans, because it would impact all of Ohio Medicaid, which is like 3 million or so. And then also all the pension systems, state government, university healthcare systems, state-owned hospitals like Ohio State Medical Center. So it could cut a wide swath.
But it is almost like a full employment act for political consultants, because I know people on both sides, and my guess is they're not working for minimum wage. So there's a lot of people going to make a lot of money.
If the supporters of this Drug Price Relief Act, or whatever they call it, are going to put this much money into it, there has to be polling, Terry, that says that they have a shot at winning.
Well, everybody would like lower drug prices, but obviously, as that commercial did, and we're still in May, they're going to point out it's not quite as simple as they claim.
Okay. All right, let's talk fireworks. Not the political ones, the real ones, the ones we lose your fingers. As you may know, Ohio has a wink-wink law banning fireworks. Companies legally sell firecrackers and cherry bombs at locations all around the state. But if you buy them at that shop off of I-70, you have to take them out of the state before you set them off. Now, a new bill would allow Ohioans to set them off in their own backyards. Laura Bischoff, why do we want to legalize fireworks? What's the
this
big
is
push on
something. This is something that almost passed, I think, in lame duck, like 2014 or so. It would allow, free the fireworks, essentially. And, I think that there's a lot of people that are dissatisfied with the liar's law. That's what they call it. The liar's law as it is right now. It's kind of silly that you have to...
You don't even have to lie anymore.
You don't even have to sign the form anymore,
Yeah.
but it is posted. You have to take them out of state, and you can't blow them off in your backyard. And then every 4th of July and New Year's Eve, you hear it going off in your neighbor's yards. Now, I do think that this could be really problematic because it would allow people to ignite them 24/7, 365 days a year. It would not necessarily be limited to 4th of July and New Year's Eve and your kid's birthday party. It could be all the time. And I have a cousin who lives in Michigan. They did that there, and she said she hears them all the time.
And Mike, I hate to sound like a liberal big government person, but there are reasons for public safety laws, because when people on 4th of July's, they've been drinking, or you have kids that don't have the good judgment, that's how sometimes people end up with missing fingers.
Adults who don't have the good judgment.
I know. Right. Well, alcohol helps them have good judgment.
Now, Terry, would this not be a Second Amendment issue?
I don't think
the right to bear arms?
No, I don't. Well, bare arms or bare fingers could be bad.
It would allow for cities and counties and townships, large townships, to set restrictions, either an outright ban or say you can only use these on certain nights of the year and certain hours.
Seems like judgment's in short supply in this General Assembly. These are the people who passed the guns everywhere bill law now that would allow guns in daycare centers.
But not at the State House.
But not at the State House, absolutely, yeah. And now they're doing this, and I think you're right, public safety is a concern.
Well, that leads to the question, Jim, would the fireworks be allowed at the State House? Now, you fired the cannon one time outside.
I have fired the cannon once. It was very
pretty cool.
Exciting.
Yeah.
But it was aimed the other way.
And I asked to turn it, but they wouldn't let me shoot it toward the State House. No, but this is kind of where you get this some of this libertarian streak that goes through the legislature and some members, and they just think that government should be hands off these kind of decisions. There's a reason why our seatbelt laws are secondary, and we don't have a motorcycle helmet law, and that we allow guns in a number of places. It's because when it comes to certain personal behavior, there's certain legislators who don't feel like they should be getting involved, and they believe that maybe if the local folks want to ban this stuff or limit it, that they can still do that, which is how it would be now, as we know that many of these laws start out that way, and over 10, 20 years, suddenly they don't have that power anymore at the local level. Things like
we get taken local control.
Ask people who want to ban
it's eroded.
Pet stores from buying from certain breeders, how that's going for them.
Well, I did fire off fireworks after the Patriots won the Super Bowl the other night, and it was around 11 o'clock. It wasn't too late. I bought them in North Carolina, so they were legal, I think, weren't they? I don't know.
Yes.
Let's get to our off-the-record parting shots. Sandy, you're up first.
This is Memorial Day weekend, and this is the weekend where we remember people who lost their lives in conflict, and to all the families who lost loved ones and all the people who lost friends, happy Memorial Day.
This is a prediction you can take to the bank. The state is in rather dire budget situation, and one solution, but I don't think it'll quite fill the nearly $1 billion hole, is to rent the Schottenstein Center. And when it's time for the conference committee, which will be like World Wrestling Federation, sell the tickets. Maybe they can raise some money to help solve part of the deficit problem.
All right, Jim.
Kind of on that theme, I've talked to a number of lobbyists over the last week or two, and the big concern is just, gosh, how bad are we going to get axed in the Senate in this budget? And I had one lobbyist tell me, you really can't do much lobbying right now on this. All we're trying to do is make sure that our cuts are fair compared to everybody else's.
Hey, Laura.
Jumping off on that fireworks thing, I think if it actually becomes law, city councils will be rushing to write restrictions because they're going to be hearing from constituents pretty quickly.
Neighbors annoyed at football fans lighting off firecrackers?
In the middle of the night.
It wasn't the middle of the night. I had the opportunity last week to visit the BBC, and we learned that fake news is a global brand. The foreign editor mentioned that all of the press officers and press ministers in countries that are not too friendly to the media anyway throw fake news in the BBC's face all the time when they're complaining about their reporters. So the world is flat for fake news. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Twitter, Facebook. You can see every show at our website, WOSU.org. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.